The stage was lit like a beacon in the middle of the night, and the energy emanating from the venue was almost palpable. The crowd was buzzing, anxious and frenzied, like a tide just waiting for the right wave to break. The familiar sound of Amy Winehouse began to fill the room, her music echoing through the speakers, building anticipation. Every note seemed to carry the promise of something big, something the audience couldn't wait to experience. The arena lights flickered in time with the music, creating an electric atmosphere. The audience was ecstatic, but there was a tension in the air, something that couldn't be clearly defined. Emotion was overwhelming, but at the same time, something else seemed about to happen. Everyone was accustomed to Amy's irreverent style, but that night, it felt like something new was about to emerge. Something that would forever change everyone's perception of the artist and her music. The singer, known for her unique energy and powerful voice, didn't appear immediately. Anticipation grew, causing the crowd to squirm in their seats, eagerly awaiting the figure they so adored. The atmosphere was charged with a growing tension, a suspense that grew with every passing second. The atmosphere was about to explode. But what no one knew was that the night's greatest impact wouldn't come solely from her songs. Something deeper was about to be revealed. And then she appeared. Amy Winehouse, with her signature style, took the stage. But the scene was unlike any other. What everyone expected as a usual performance of hits and enchantment soon transformed into a moment that seemed to promise something much deeper and unexpected. She didn't smile as she usually did. Her gaze was serious, focused, almost distant. Fans sensed the change, a sense that the show would be more than just a musical performance. That's when the music stopped. The tension in the air rose, and for a brief moment what seemed like a pause became a fissure in time. Amy took the microphone, and the silence in the arena was absolute. It was the moment of a revelation, of something never before spoken. What the singer was about to say, no one could have predicted. The audience, which until then had been radiant with joy, now felt a chill. Amy had set the stage for something much bigger than just a performance. Amy Winehouse, microphone in hand, didn't rush the moment. The pause was far from a simple intermission. She had created a heavy atmosphere where every second counted, where every breath was closely monitored by everyone present. Her gaze swept the crowd, and instead of beginning to sing, she simply began to speak. Her voice, normally powerful and emotionally charged, now sounded darker, deeper, as if she were about to reveal something she had been holding back for years. "I'm not who you think I am," was the first sentence out of her mouth, and upon hearing those words, the audience fell completely silent. It was a true blow, a shattering of expectations. What Amy was about to reveal wasn't about her music, nor her personal life in a superficial way. It was clear there was something much deeper behind those words, something that challenged everyone's perception of the singer, of the woman behind the mysterious eyes and the voice that enchanted the world. The truth she was about to tell wasn't something the media or her fans could have imagined. For years, Amy had been judged and shaped by the public image the music industry and the paparazzi had created. She was not only a talented artist, but also a figure of scandal, someone whose actions and words were repeatedly distorted. But now, she was determined to finally break free from that image, to free herself from the shackles of a fame built on lies and misunderstandings. "I survived what you never knew was happening behind the scenes," she continued, her voice thick with pain. The words came out as a catharsis, a release that seemed to come from a place very deep within her. Amy was talking about the relentless pressures of the music industry, about how fame, which should be a celebration of talent, had actually trapped her in a vicious cycle of expectations and judgments. The artist was revealing that much of what was known about her was nothing more than a facade, a construct to meet the demands of the market and the media. Each sentence Amy delivered seemed to resonate like a slap in the face to the public's expectations. Those who saw her only as the rebellious diva, the counterculture icon, were about to discover that the woman behind the fame was far more complex than they'd imagined. What she had to say now wasn't just about her career or the stories she'd always been told. It was the raw truth of someone who had been a victim of other people's expectations and who was now, finally, ready to be who she truly was. Fans, who had been immersed in the euphoria of the show, began to feel disconcerted. The energy of the room changed drastically. What had previously been a spectacle of joy and fun now seemed to have given way to a moment of introspection, as if everyone were being forced to reflect on Amy Winehouse's true nature and what had led her to this point. The shock was inevitable, and the audience was torn between surprise and anticipation of what was to come. Amy finally had the stage, and the truth she would share from that moment on would change everything. As Amy continued her revelation, she deepened her connection with the audience. She now spoke about the difficult years she had faced behind the scenes, moments she had never shared before. It was as if finally she was allowing the world to see her true face, without the masks fame had forced her to wear. Her words were harsh, charged with an uncomfortable sincerity, and it stirred the emotions of everyone in the audience. Amy began to describe lonely nights when, despite being surrounded by people, she felt more isolated than ever. The music industry, which initially seemed like a dream, soon revealed itself to be a nightmare. She wasn't just a rising star. She was treated like a commodity, manipulated by people who cared only about the profits she could generate, not her well-being. Expectations were ever higher, criticism ever fiercer, and her every move was monitored, analyzed, and distorted. What many didn't know was that behind the spotlight and glamour, Amy faced a constant internal battle. The pressure to maintain her image was unbearable, and the way she dealt with it wasn't what the public imagined. She wasn't just fighting fame, but also a cruel expectation that forced her to fit a mold never meant for her. The pressure to be perfect consumed her, and the result was profound emotional and psychological distress. It was during this struggle that Amy found herself more alone than ever. The people who claimed to be there for her were often the very ones pushing her toward the abyss. She recounted how her life had been invaded, how her privacy had been destroyed by the media's relentless pursuit of scandal. Every mistake, every stumble was magnified, transforming her personal journey into a public spectacle. "I was just a woman trying to survive," she said, her voice breaking, as if it were the first time she truly believed those words. The audience was attentive, but there was an air of disbelief. How had no one known this before? How had someone so iconic, so admired, been treated so ruthlessly? The public, who had always seen Amy as an artist full of personality and drive, was now beginning to realize that her true strength lay not in her public image, but in the quiet resilience with which she dealt with it all. Amy, who had been seen as the irreverent diva, was actually broken inside, and that was the part she was finally revealing. While the audience was immersed in the shock of the revelations, Amy continued her emotional journey. She was no longer speaking as an artist on stage, but as a woman, finally willing to share the pain she had carried for years. Her eyes were fixed on the audience, but her voice trembled slightly, as if with each word she were releasing a long-held emotional burden. The truth, once again, was harsh, but necessary. "I was seen as a strong woman, but no one knew what was going on behind the scenes," she said with raw honesty. "I wore the facade of having everything under control, but inside I was falling apart." The audience could tell those words weren't just about the struggles of fame. Amy was talking about her internal struggle, the constant battle against loneliness, anxiety, and her own demons. She described times when she felt unable to trust anyone around her, fearing that everyone, even her friends and family, were there only for their own self-interest, not for the person she truly was. This outburst wasn't just about fame and the challenges of the music industry. It was also about the weight of being constantly judged, labeled, and placed on a pedestal no one could maintain for long. She spoke of sleepless nights, periods when she simply didn't know how to deal with feelings of helplessness and despair. Most importantly, she spoke about how for a long time she believed her vulnerabilities were weaknesses, that the pain she felt was something to be hidden, not shared. Little by little, Amy began to expose how much her public image as Amy Winehouse the star was actually a facade, a performance she was forced to perform. The singer revealed how difficult it was to deal with the idea of being seen as a sensation, but at the same time feeling like a piece of meat sold and consumed by the media. She was finally allowing the public to see the side of her she had kept hidden, afraid of being too vulnerable. By exposing herself in this way, she was not only liberating herself, but also confronting her own insecurities in a brutally honest way. Audiences, accustomed to Amy's exuberant, outgoing nature, now saw a broken but also incredibly courageous woman. She was no longer trying to fit into others' expectations, but allowing herself to be who she truly was, with all her flaws, her insecurities, and above all, her humanity. It was as if for the first time in her life, she was allowing herself to be genuine and honest with those around her. And in doing so, she was creating an even deeper connection with those who loved her, and perhaps with those who never knew what really went on behind the scenes. The revelation not only shocked fans, but also made them reflect on the pressure we all feel to be perfect, to always look good and be ready to please others. Amy was showing us that often this pursuit of an idealized image can be the prison we create for ourselves. And by sharing this truth, she was freeing us from an expectation that should never have existed. As Amy delved deeper into her words, the audience began to see a shift in her perception. She was no longer just a famous singer with ups and downs, but a woman who had overcome immense obstacles. Even in the face of adversity, she continued to persevere, fighting with all her might to keep her passion for music and, above all, her authenticity alive. The vulnerability with which she shared her pain made her strength even more evident. "I knew music was what kept me alive," she said with a tone of resolve. "It was the only thing I could control, the only thing that made sense in the chaos." Through music, Amy found refuge. Even when she felt broken and hopeless, the melodies and lyrics were what helped her find the strength to carry on. Music wasn't just a form of expression for her, it was her means of survival. And in saying this, she was conveying a clear message to her audience. Art has the power to heal and give purpose, even in the most desolate situations. She shared stories of moments when she considered giving up, when the industry's pressure and the relentless demand for perfection made her doubt herself. But Amy also spoke about how, amid these moments of weakness, she found an unexpected source of strength. She didn't rely solely on the image others had created of her, but on her true essence. The music she made wasn't about pleasing others, but about speaking to her own heart and soul. When she began singing, she was not only expressing herself, but healing herself, even if only for a few minutes. The audience began to see Amy in a new way, no longer as the star of an industry that had consumed her, but as a resilient woman who refused to be defined by others. She wasn't weak. She wasn't fragile. She was, in fact, a survivor. Every step she took on stage, every word she shared, was a reaffirmation of her inner strength. She was no longer struggling to please or maintain an image. She was simply being true to herself. And that made her even more powerful. The shift in Amy's narrative was profound. She went from being seen solely as an icon of rebellion to someone who had faced personal demons and still stood tall. Her music, her legacy, and her journey were now not just about success and fame, but about how she used her experiences to empower herself and eventually liberate herself. By sharing this with her audience, she demonstrated that true strength lies not in hiding from pain, but in facing it and moving forward. Now more than ever, fans were beginning to understand that Amy wasn't a woman at the mercy of her circumstances, but a woman who, despite everything she'd been through, had risen again. The public was learning that behind the shadows of her most difficult moments, Amy had found a way to reinvent herself and stay true to her truth. What had seemed like an outpouring of pain now became an anthem of resilience. What began as a personal revelation from Amy Winehouse quickly transformed into a moment of collective reflection for the audience. Every word she spoke seemed to touch the heart of every person present. The atmosphere had completely changed. The noise and euphoria typical of a concert had given way to a reverent silence. The audience, who had previously been there simply to see a performance, was now immersed in a transformative experience, connecting with the woman before them on a much deeper level. Tears began to stream down many faces. Men and women, young and old, everyone was there, feeling the intensity of the moment. Amy's revelation wasn't just about her, it was about all of us. She had shown her vulnerability in a way no one expected, and it touched the deepest fibers of everyone's soul. She was no longer an artist on stage, she was a woman sharing her truth, her suffering, and her strength. The reaction was immediate. Some fans screamed, others cried, but everyone felt the impact. This emotional connection was more than just a display of empathy. It was a profound understanding that even the most public, most admired figures are human. Amy had gone from being just the artist, the public figure, to a person with all the complexities and inner struggles we all face. She was no longer a distant figure, but someone everyone could relate to, someone who, by exposing herself, united the audience in a unique way. As Amy spoke, fans began to realize something more. She wasn't just venting, but also challenging them to reflect on their own lives. While we often see celebrities treated as unattainable entities, Amy had torn back that curtain and shown that deep down, we're all made of the same pain and joy. The audience was now more connected to her than ever, not just by her music, but by the humanity she had so courageously shared. Amidst the silence, the energy in the audience began to shift. While there was still a weight to the words Amy was sharing, there was also a sense of liberation. Tears were often accompanied by smiles, as the audience no longer saw a broken woman, but someone who, despite everything, stood strong. And in doing so, she taught her fans a powerful lesson about the importance of being authentic, and above all, being true to ourselves. It was as if Amy had offered a gift to everyone there. She had invited them to look beyond the surface of fame. She showed them the importance of being vulnerable, of accepting their flaws, and of not hiding behind others' expectations. It was a gift of humanity, and everyone in the audience knew that moment would be remembered forever. After sharing her personal pain, Amy Winehouse turned the conversation to something even more poignant, her critical view of the music industry that had consumed her. The industry that for so long catapulted her to stardom was also responsible for forcing her into a role that wasn't hers. She revealed that behind the stage and the applause, there existed a network of manipulation and exploitation, a ruthless game of profit and contracts where artists were seen more as products than as people. They don't care who you are, they only care about what you can give them, Amy declared firmly. The audience listened in silence as she began to expose the fallacies of the industry that had demanded and exacted so much from her. She spoke of the false promises made to emerging artists, the constant pressure to maintain a flawless image, and the lack of control musicians truly had over their own lives. Recordings, contracts, appearances, everything was decided by others, leaving no room for true creative freedom. Amy didn't just criticize the industry for its ruthless practices, but also addressed the emotional and psychological toll it took on artists. She recounted how, behind the scenes of fame, many were lost in a cycle of dependence on external validation, trying to fill the void left by years of manipulation. She spoke about how difficult it was to maintain her sanity when her image was constantly distorted and designed to meet public expectations, often ignoring her own emotional and physical needs. For her, the industry not only robbed artists of their identities, but also forced them into a constant internal battle between being true to themselves and being what the market demanded. Music, which should be a form of genuine expression, became for many a form of currency, a way to please others, not a way to connect with their true essence. Amy set herself as an example of how this flawed system can destroy even the brightest and most creative minds. By sharing these truths, Amy not only challenged the industry, but also invited the audience to reflect on the price of fame and what it truly means to be an artist in the modern world. She made them question to what extent art should be controlled by commercial interests, and to what extent artists should submit to what the market expects of them. The show was no longer just a musical performance. It was a lesson in reflection on the power of the music industry and how it often destroys what should be its true essence. As Amy's words continued to reverberate throughout the arena, she began to make a crucial transition, leading the audience from a state of reflection to one of profound revelation. She was no longer simply sharing her pain and criticism, but now prepared to offer something more powerful, music as the only true source of liberation. Music has always been my escape. The stage is where I free myself. Here, I can be myself, she stated, before picking up her guitar and beginning to play. The audience, immersed in silent reflection on the truths Amy had shared, was surprised by the shift she brought. The stage lights dimmed, creating a more intimate atmosphere, while the soft melody of the guitar filled the air. The words of her songs, normally so known for their rawness and emotion, now took on new meaning. Amy was not only singing, but healing herself by allowing her art to transcend personal pain and touch the hearts of her fans. "This song is for all of us," she said, before beginning to sing, her voice cracking with emotion but firm, as if finally freeing herself from years of pressure. The lyrics, so deeply personal, were now a cry of resistance, a form of reconciliation with her own suffering. Music became not just an art, but a tool for healing. She sang not to please others, but to save herself, and this was one of the most powerful moments of the night. Her performance became a release for both herself and everyone present, as if with each note played, a piece of her pain was transformed into something beautiful and redemptive. The song she chose for this special moment reflected not only her struggle, but her ability to overcome it. With music, Amy wasn't just dealing with the adversities of fame, but also with her own inner wounds. She had found a way to express what words couldn't, and by doing so in front of her fans, she wasn't just sharing her pain. She was offering a form of transcendence, an opportunity for everyone who listened to her to reconnect with their own emotions and the truth of who they truly were. The audience, previously in tense silence, was now enveloped by the healing energy of that performance. Amy's music, once a symbol of struggle and chaos, now felt like a bridge to inner peace. By singing it, she demonstrated that while pain never completely disappeared, it could be transformed into something beautiful and powerful. The audience felt this in every word she sang, in every chord she played. Music, which had always been her greatest companion, was now being shared as a gift, an opportunity for everyone to heal in some way. The power of Amy Winehouse's music was once again demonstrated in its ability to connect people, not just with her art, but with her humanity. She was no longer simply expressing herself. She was guiding her fans through a process of self-discovery and healing, showing them that even in the darkest nights, there was still room for light. Music, in its purest form, could free them, just as it had freed her. As the music echoed through the arena, something deeper began to take shape. Amy wasn't just singing for her fans, she was leaving a mark, something that transcended the moment. She knew that by exposing herself so rawly and honestly, she was creating something that would reach far beyond that night's performance. She wasn't just sharing her struggles and triumphs, but also teaching a lesson about the true meaning of being human, about the importance of being true to yourself, regardless of external pressures. I'm here to show you that no matter what life throws at us, we can find a way out. Sometimes that way out is through our art, our music, our truth, Amy said with a calm smile. She knew her legacy wasn't in the songs that topped the charts, nor in the fame she achieved. Her true legacy would be the impact her truth would have on those who listened to her and saw her as an inspiration to follow their own paths, unafraid to be who they truly are. This reflection on her legacy went beyond the simple concept of fame or recognition. Amy was, at that moment, creating something that many artists strive for, but few achieve, the true transformation of a life into something greater than itself. She wanted her legacy to be remembered not for fame, but for the courage to face her own shadows and the ability to transform her pain into something that could inspire others to do the same. It wasn't just about her music, but the message she left for the world. The audience was silent now, absorbing every word, every gesture. The connection between Amy and her fans deepened. They no longer saw her simply as a star who shone for a moment, but as someone who had touched their lives irrevocably. She had become a part of their stories, a reference point for the struggle for truth, authenticity, and self-acceptance. Amy Winehouse's legacy would not be forgotten by future generations of fans. It would be a guide for those who, like her, needed to break free from other people's expectations and find their own voice. Before leaving the stage, Amy took one last pause. She knew the night was coming to an end, but the journey was just beginning. With a soft smile and a calm expression, she looked out at the audience one last time. Thank you for letting me be myself, for accepting me just as I am. I hope that when I leave today, everyone leaves here feeling like they can be exactly who they are, without fear of anything. This wasn't just a farewell to a show, but a farewell to an era, an invitation to freedom and self-acceptance. Amy left the stage, but her legacy had been deeply ingrained in the hearts of her fans. They knew that night, that truth, would resonate for a long time. The impact of her sincerity and courage in confronting the system, fame, and most importantly herself, would be felt for a long time. Her legacy lay not in the superficial victories of the music industry, but in the transformation she wrought within the souls of her fans and all who connected with her music and her truth. As Amy's final song began, the stage lit up one last time. The crowd was in a state of emotional ecstasy, unsure of what to expect next. Amy, with impressive calm, paused for a long time, as if wanting to let every second of the night sink into everyone's memory. She had shared everything she could, her challenges, her pain, her struggle, and now the final surprise was about to be revealed. "I've said everything I needed to say," she began, her voice soft, yet still carrying an intensity that kept the audience guessing. "But there's one thing you still need to know. Life isn't about the mistakes we make, but what we choose to do with them. I'm not just a survivor, I'm a warrior. And more than anything else, I'm free." These words fell like a blow of wisdom and freedom. Amy, her voice now filled with a certainty she seemed to have found in that very moment, looked at the audience and made one final revelation. "You think you've seen it all? But my truth isn't about the past. It's about who I am now. I am my own hero. It was the last word she spoke before stepping off the stage, and the impact was immediate. There were no more words to be said. She needed no further explanation or justification. The ultimate surprise wasn't a new song or a breathtaking final performance, but her simple and powerful declaration of freedom and authenticity. Amy Winehouse had been an icon of resistance throughout her career, but that night she became a definitive symbol of resilience and self-sufficiency. The applause began to echo, but this time it wasn't just the applause of a crowd recognizing a great artist. It was the applause of a crowd that deeply understood the meaning of what had just happened. Amy hadn't just performed for them. She had liberated them with her truth, and now everyone there felt they could be who they truly were, without fear, without masks. As the last note of her song faded into the air, the crowd remained on their feet, applauding not only the performance, but the courage, strength, and freedom Amy had just revealed to the world. That night, she was no longer just the successful singer, the star who defied all expectations. She was a free woman who, by sharing her deepest truth, had given the world the greatest gift she could offer, the freedom to be who we truly are, without shame, without fear. And so, Amy Winehouse's story didn't end in fame or scandal. It ended with the most profound of lessons. True freedom lies in being honest with yourself, and that without a doubt was the greatest legacy she could leave.